Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. I'm excited to introduce Michael Marquardt. He's a bit of an unsung hero in Mormon history circles, but if you really want to know a lot about Mormon history, you need to talk to Michael. In our next conversation, we'll talk about where the church was organized. Michael's come across some information that says it was not in Fayette. So in our next conversation, we'll talk about where and why he believes it was organized someplace else. Check out our conversation. I'd also like to encourage you to please subscribe on our website. Go to gospeltangents.com and click on the yellow subscribe button. And for $10 a month, I can send you a transcript of our interview with Michael, or I can also send you a paperback like one of these for $15, or I'll send you both for $20 a month. So anyway, please check that out. Help support Gospel Tangents so that we can continue to put out some amazing history resources in Mormon history. Now back to our conversation. Welcome to Gospel Tangents podcast. I'm super excited. I've got a special guest today. And could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Michael Marquardt. All
right. And you are, let's see, how do I say this? I think you are an unsung hero in Mormon history. Is that a proper description of you?
I published a lot, so...
I think you're under the radar for most people, though. I know a lot of people come to you, like I know Brian Hales said you helped him with a lot of polygamy things and that sort of thing. Like, you're like a big resource for people.
Well, I try to help anyone who is interested in Latter-day Saint history.
Uh-huh.
So I still do that, and I still publish books and also articles.
Okay. Can you give us an idea of how many articles you've published? Because I think it's quite extensive.
Well, I started publishing in 1973, and I still published, currently had 2 articles published, either authored by myself or with a co-author this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have a few books, available that people can purchase, or ebooks.
Uh-huh.
So I try to make it simple, understandable, and available.
All right. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Do you have a history degree, or what's your background?
My background is just, studying into the documents, visiting different historic sites, libraries across the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do have a book on the rise of Mormonism, 1816 to 1844, which tells about the early development of the Latter-day Saint tradition and tells about the strengths and weaknesses. It's pretty open, footnoted, sources are given, index.
Mm-hmm.
And also the Joseph Smith Revelations, 1828 to 1843, that has the majority of his revelations in chronological order.
Oh, wow.
So that's also. Then I have another one on the 4 Gospels according to Joseph Smith, which deals with his biblical revisions.
Oh, okay.
So those are as far as books. Of course, there's other works that previously has been out there, the Inventing Mormonism, Tradition and Historical Record. Mm-hmm. And that's where I talk about the April 6, 1830 organization of the Church of Christ.
Okay. Well, that's why we're here. We're definitely going to be talking about that April 6th date. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So, now, do we have any idea? I know that in the history of the church, it says that there were 6 original members that were there for that first meeting on April 6th. Do we know who those are, or do we have an idea?
Well, first, there was no known minutes at that meeting, but there were 6 revelations given.
6?
Yeah.
Wow.
But that not necessarily they were the...
They weren't received that day.
They were received on April 6, 1830.
Oh, okay.
but they also were received in Manchester, Ontario County, New York.
Okay. So, because according to the official church history, where was the church organized?
Well, over a period of a few years, it was said it was the Church of the Latter-day Saints said it was organized in Fayette, Seneca County, New York, approximately 25 miles away.
And you're saying it was actually in Manchester?
Yeah, from all indications, it was actually in the Smith home in Manchester.
Okay.
And that was, 188 years ago.
Okay, so why is there this discrepancy then? What do you think? Why does the church say Fayette, and why are you saying it's in Manchester?
Well, it's basically trying to look at over a period of time where the baptisms occur, where the revelations were given. And of course, the early Church of Christ did publish in the Evening and Morning Star, the first church periodical, that it was published in that was organized and established in Manchester on April 6th, and that's also where you find where it mentions 6 members. So there probably was 6 individuals. We don't know if they were male or female.
Okay, so you said this was published where again?
In the Evening and the Morning Star in Independence, Jackson County, Missouri.
And what was the date on that?
It'll be March 1833 and April 1833.
So in March and April of 1833, the Evening and Morning Star is saying that the church was organized in Manchester, not in Fayette.
Correct.
So how did we move from Manchester to Fayette?
Well, as we go on, in May of 1834, members of the United Firm, which was it's like an auxiliary of the church at that time, met and changed the name of the revealed name of the Church of Christ to the Church of the Latter-day Saints, and that's where that name comes in.
Now, I just interviewed, in fact, we just published yesterday it was, with an interview with Steve Shields, and he said that it was Sidney Rigdon who came up with that name, Church of the Latter-day Saints.
Yes, he proposed that. Sidney Rigdon was an elder and also high priest in the church, and the church was in deep debt at that time, early time, 1834, and that was one of the reasons at that time that they said that the church was organized in Fayette to protect the organization. It's the same reason as the next year in the 1835 first edition of the Doctrine and Covenants, they used pseudonyms. In other words, not real names, but other names so people would not know who the revelations were referring to. So protect the organization, protect the individuals.
And for financial reasons, is that the main reason?
From what I can gather, that's the main reason at that time.
Okay, so let's recap here. So April 6, 1830, the church is organized in Manchester. 1833, it's published that it's still organized in Manchester. 1835, we start having some difficulties with finances, so they renamed the church Church of the Latter-day Saints. Left out Jesus Christ, by the way, I'll add.
Well, it was 1834.
1834? Okay.
Yeah, you'll notice sometimes while the name Jesus is not there, or the title Christ, it was also used at that time. It just wasn't the official name at that period. So when you hear about Latter-day Saints, that's where you hear that terminology based upon the name of the church, even though there's revelations that mentions church members as saints.
Okay. So 1834, it's the Church of the Latter-day Saints, officially, on legal documents. And then you said it changed again in what year? 1836?
Well, the next, I guess, problem area. There was problems in Kirkland, Ohio. Eventually,
with the bank.
That was a major item, the bank. And then in 1838, there was a revelation in Far West that gave the title, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So it uses the first part, Church of Jesus Christ, and uses the latter part, that Sidney Rigdon, as one individual suggested 1834. So 1838 is the next step. So there's already been very early changes.
Okay. So Church of Christ, Church of the Latter-day Saints, 1834. 1838 is when we went Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yes.
And that's
for the name of the church.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that there's been some differences in spelling and punctuation. I know the Strangites have a latter space capital D day, and in the LDS Church, which I'm going to call it that, even though we're not supposed to, it's latter dash small d day saints.
Yeah.
And I believe the RLDS Church used that name until the polygamy prosecutions too. So there's a lot of people that have used that name.
Right, and it's it can be used any time, because even in England, when they had the Latter-day Saint Millennial Star, they would have a dash between latter and day, but it's all capital. So it's
capital D day.
It's a very minor deal, but it was only suggested in 1838 as the name of the church, not any auxiliary. So that it's been the name of the church ever, of the church that is headquarters in Salt Lake City now, and there's a lot of other restoration churches that history goes back, and they claim that they were organized on April 6, 1830. Though, and sometimes they mention the location, and sometimes they don't.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. So, I know with the Joseph Smith Papers Project, they really tried to clean up the history. Are you surprised that they haven't cleaned up that the church was organized in Manchester and they're still relying on Fayette?
Well, all the evidence over time, as we're looking backwards, indicates that the location of the baptisms and the location of where the revelations were given and received was in Manchester. There's no indication of travel either way. And so if the idea of being organized in Fayette on April 6th, then you still would have to have travel the same day for baptisms in Manchester if you go with that scenario. But we have, as time goes on, individuals who were there, non-members, people who were not really interested in the church, who witnessed some of those baptisms in Manchester, in what they called at that time Crooked Creek or Hathaway Brook, or either way, where they dammed up the stream and did a few baptisms.
So it just seems strange to me. It sounds like you've got some pretty good evidence that it's Manchester, and I don't understand why official church records still say Fayette.
Well, there's they own property. The church owns property in Fayette. They have reconstructed a log home. They have a nice chapel there, and some traditions, as time goes on, after 1834, mentions Fayette, for example, the manuscript history of the church, where we get a lot of the information on baptisms for early members. But they're just following the 1834 change.
So it's just kind of a tradition that's crept in and
yeah, because it's been published many times from many different pamphlets, periodicals, that's been organized in Manchester. And A lot of the early ideas was, for example, that the Church of Christ was incorporated in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Over a period of time, we found out that is not correct.
Oh, it's not?
The church was never incorporated in the state of New York in 1830 in either Seneca County, Ontario County, or Wayne County.
Oh, because isn't it in the Joseph Smith history where it says that they had 6 original members according to the laws of New York?
No, they had 6 members, they say, but see, the church was established by the freedom of religion clause in dealing with the U.S. Constitution.
So you don't need to write any papers down or anything. You can just say
there was no property because the Smiths didn't own their log home.
Okay.
There was no reason to incorporate, and if you did incorporate, you would have to give 15 days notice, 2 consecutive Sabbaths, and then you would have to have trustees for the church.
Okay.
And that's probably where some people have, thought that, 6 would, work in from 2 to 9 trustees. But there was never any trustees because there was no property. And also a lot of this is based upon later recollection of David Whitmer.
Okay.
In his pamphlet addressed to all believers in Christ.
Okay. So David says what?
He mentions his father's home, and his father was Peter Whitmer Sr. in Fayette.
And so David says that it was organized in Fayette.
Yes.
And so you believe that's just a mistake, a mistaken memory?
Well, it's probably more of a mistake because David also said that the first mistake was April 6, 1830, ordaining Joseph as a prophet.
Oh, really?
So we have another problem. But also, how many individuals were at that first organizational meeting?
Right.
And
That's
his
a good
numbers have, over time, increased. When people interviewed him, he would say, for example, if 40 were there, and then maybe 50 or 60 or 70, or people from the church in Manchester, and people from the church in Fayette, people from the church in Colesville. So he's probably getting this information a little mixed up. The thing is that there were important meetings in Fayette. For example, the first 3 church conferences were held in Fayette, and we have minutes for 2 of them, 2 out of the 3.
Okay.
And that's where for example, the first conference was June 9th, 1830, and that's where Samuel Smith, Joseph Smith's younger brother, was ordained an elder, so he was the 7th elder in the church. And those are basically copies of minutes.
Okay, so is that the first minutes that we have? Is this June
9th, 1830, and when we look at what's called the manuscript history of the church. It was started in 1838, but we don't have those original notes. We do have some notes of 1839 that were copied into a bound book in same year, 1839. And they had the conferences with different dates, June 1st and I believe September 1st. Because they didn't have the copies of the minutes, which was the conference minutes that were done in Far West Missouri, known as the Far West Record.
Okay.
So some of those dates are off as much as 25 days.
Oh, wow. Yeah, June to September seems like a big gap there. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Michael Marquardt. In our next conversation, we'll try to nail down who were the original 6 members. Was Porter Rockwell one of them?
Those are Joseph Smith's father and mother.
Okay.
Yeah. It mentions Martin Harris.
Okay.
and it didn't have the first name, but the last name was Rockwell.
We'll have a transcript out shortly on this conversation, and you can purchase individual copies at our website at gospeltangents.com/shop. If you want to be the first to get a copy, please subscribe on our website for just $10 a month. I'll send it to you first as a PDF. Or if you'd like a physical copy, for $15 a month, I'll be happy to send that to you as well. You can get our transcripts at our Amazon.com author page. I've got a link here, but just do a search for Gospel Tangents interview and you should be able to find a bunch of them there. Please subscribe at patreon.com/gospeltangents. For $5 a month, you can hear the entire interview uncut. And for $10, you can get a PDF copy. We've also got a $15 tier where if you want a physical copy, I'll be the first to send it to you. So please subscribe at Patreon or on our website at gospeltangents.com as well. For our latest updates, please like our page at facebook.com/gospeltangents. And also check our Twitter updates at Gospel Tangents as well. Please subscribe on our Apple Podcasts page at tinyurl.com/gospeltangents, or you can subscribe on your Android device. Just do a search for Gospel Tangents. Thanks again for listening. Click here to subscribe, here for a transcript, and over here we've got some more of our great videos. Thanks again.